We're ready? Okay. This is, we're live now, so this is Laws, Ordinance, Zoning, and Permits Committee for July 6th, 7 o'clock. We have all members are present. That would be Mr. Triplett, Ms. Alt, and myself, Mr. Richard. We also have with us tonight our council president, Mr. Watt, and also our law director, Mr. Palmer. And we appreciate also our safety service director, Ms. Ward, is also present with us tonight. If you've had a chance, it's on the back of the agenda. If you could look at it, the minutes from the last meeting, and if everything looks good.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
Okay, Ms. Triplett made the motion.
I'll second that motion.
Mrs. Alt made the second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried. Minutes from June 1st meeting has been approved. The agenda, is there any additions or subtractions? If not, can I have a motion to approve the agenda for tonight?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda for tonight.
Ms. Alt makes the motion.
I'll second that.
Ms. Triplett seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. The agenda is approved for tonight. We'll start right into the first thing. Mobile food vendors. I'm going to ask Mr. Palmer, did you want to take this, or is this Ms. Ward?
I'll let
I'm sorry,
Ms.
Chief.
Ward do this if she'd like. Oh, okay. In what is going to be a common theme tonight, this is basically a, hold on.
These are under your stuff.
As I was saying, what's going to be a common theme tonight, this is a sample ordinance for your committee. I was charged at the last meeting, I think it was actually the May Laws and Ordinances meeting, to draft a food truck ordinance that basically allowed food trucks to operate in the city of Guion as long as they have licensure or approval of the appropriate Board of Health, to make sure that they're on the up and up. So what you have before you is one, and all cities do this. This is taken from another city as an example, but it seemed to me to be a good one, that covers many different parts of what they have in their mobile food truck ordinance. That doesn't mean you need to adopt all of these provisions and sections. However, it does lay out a basic sort of process by which food trucks can come into the city, they can be registered, they have to be inspected by the City of Guion Fire Department. This happens in many, many other cities. And I'll let Nikki speak to this in a minute in terms of her contact with the police, with the fire department on this. But if there are deficiencies, they need to be rectified. And then basically there's a simple permit that's issued and they're allowed to operate. Now, one of the small concerns that has come up, and I don't want to put words in Nikki's mouth, but one of the small concerns that have come up is when they operate perhaps on a food truck, but there's operations on sidewalks, for instance in Heisey Park or wherever, obstructing pedestrian egress, access and their ability to get around. So that's encompassed in this as well. So Nikki, you want to share anything more?
Like Thomas said, my only comment is we have, some cities treat different, like food carts, push carts, petty carts, food trailers, food trucks, they're all treated slightly differently. So, for example, a food trailer that is towed by a truck versus a food truck that drives up versus a push cart that someone manually moves. We've had someone in one of the parks who is a push cart vendor and is setting up with his table and his cart partially on the sidewalk and has flags sitting in the parking spaces in the park. So some safety concerns, but also, as Thomas said, foot traffic getting through where they're they have the cart sitting on the sidewalk. Those are, you know, I went through the park and saw that and I was like, probably not an ideal setup, but I certainly understand those carts are heavy and getting it into the grass and then getting it back off the grass. I can understand how, from a logistics point of view, the sidewalk's much easier to navigate that thing than the grass. But that's, you know, that's one thing that I thought perhaps should be taken into consideration, that some of these things, they are different. You know, a truck that pulls up in front of a business uptown versus someone who unloads it from the back of their pickup.
Yeah.
I think what we're facing, members of council, is that we're getting a lot more of these, and from what I picked up on last time, regardless of my personal opinion, when I agree with you, we want to encourage this.
Yeah.
It's just a simple process to make it as, you know, we can guarantee safety, guarantee that sort of thing, but at the same time can make sure that these can operate their business as they see fit. So there you go.
So, like for Oktoberfest, are we still gonna charge each one of those trailers $50 for inspection?
That's, Oktoberfest operates under a use permit, so that's covered. For Oktoberfest, Pickle Run, those are governed under their own use permit. So this is for things that aren't part of a regular use permit.
So kind of the freelancer, so
Yeah.
to speak.
Well, you know, case in point, there's an, I almost stopped today, but there's an ice cream truck in the middle of Heisey Park. That's what this is.
So, I don't understand what the difference is between that ice cream truck and 48 vendors downtown.
There's none from their operational point of view.
Okay, they're operational, but we're still gonna charge them $50 per inspection?
We don't charge the people at Oktoberfest separately.
I know that.
Yeah.
Well, that's,
How long does it take for an inspection, I wonder?
I did ask the fire chief from his perspective if they have any concerns with doing these inspections or calls for the gas and all that. He said no problem from their perspective. They have no issues with doing them. I don't know, he didn't say how, you know, is it a 5-minute thing, is it a 30-minute thing, but
So, in this section 4, it says for 4B, so could they pay the fee and it's good for 2 months, or is it each time that it's parked? I wonder.
It can be whatever you want it to be.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't even have to have a fee.
Right.
There's no requirement that this needs to be something that generates revenue for the city. It's totally what you want to have happen.
So we currently don't have anything for anything like any of the trucks or any of the hand pushed or whatever.
our ordinances really, I think, predate the mobile food truck craze.
Okay.
I think our ordinances,
Well, I know we talked about this several months back,
Yep.
and that was kind of some of the, it's kind of come back a little bit to, on that. And Mark, I kind of agree with Thomas, we don't technically have to have any permits, or in the sense of a fee, you know what I
You
mean?
know?
no, I mean, we don't. I mean, if we're not gonna charge
I would-
this group, why are we gonna charge this group?
Right.
Yep.
I mean, we gotta be fair about this stuff if we're gonna make it into an ordinance.
You do charge solicitors for it, so.
Well, I think with it's just, that was, as mentioned, the festival issues, because of the scope of it, that might be a different, would be a different parameter as opposed to an individual. For example, I've seen this today when I drove by the city hall down here, well, actually it was out here. A gentleman was doing basically a hot dog stand.
Right.
So,
Right across the street.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
So instead of doing all that for inspection, which doesn't take long, why don't you just charge them for a fee to come in and peddle their food, like say $25 for a year's pass.
That's your call, Mark, this is.
That's
I
up to
mean,
you. That's
why
when you
don't we
pay the
do
big
something
bucks.
like that?
Yep.
We charge 15.
15 for a
For a
solicitor's
solicitor's permit, I think it's $25 for the itinerant vendor.
Well, this is like an itinerant.
And the solicitor's permit is good, I want to say 60 days.
So, you know, just make it a one-time fee once they come up to register with you. And these other permits, whoo-wee. That's, if we're not gonna charge them all, then we don't need to charge any.
And I
I've
can
got that
certainly,
written
when they
down.
apply, make sure they have, here's our certification from the state health department that
Right.
we're good to go. I mean, that can be something, insurance, we want to have insurance requirements in case someone trips over their cart or whatever. You know, that can all be part of the application, whatever you guys want to do. Yeah.
Yep, this is designed to be as accommodating as possible. Just provide some basic guidelines.
I like having them, you know, whenever they apply for it, to show their permit from the health department, their insurance, and then maybe a one-time fee. And then I see back here if there's any penalties for not doing things right. Maybe just not letting them have a license in town again. I don't know if they keep it parked overnight or something.
Well, here's another one, section F of 05. For no longer than 8 hours, they're open longer than 8 hours on Oktoberfest and Pickle Run and, you know, why don't we move that up to 12?
Where'd you see that?
Section F, section 5, F.
Okay, I'm looking. Up. Okay.
And I know we talked last time, do they have to be, is there anything on here about them being self-contained, like they have their own electricity and water and stuff, so they're not tapping into the hoses and plugging in the park?
We had that conversation today. I think
Yeah, we did.
most of the big trucks are 220 volt, so they can't just go plug in at the
Okay.
shelter, luckily. But I don't know, some of the smaller carts may. I don't, but that was something that we kind of chatted about briefly, is hooking up to city power supply. Although at festivals and whatever, we do provide,
No.
but it's metered.
Yeah, but that's, again, that's kind of a different
It's a
parameter,
different animal,
yeah. So,
But it would, you know, I don't think most of them could just pull up and plug in because of what they require, but it is something to consider.
well, I was gonna say, I know all of us have just seen this information. Did you, we could, I mean, if you wanna take and digest it, come up with suggestions, stuff, unless there's some rush on it, I'd say, let's go over it. And then when we come back to meet again, then we can get a ordinance drafted up, and, move it on to council then.
I've written down what Mark said, so I'll make some tweaks to
Updates.
it, so when you see it next time, it'll look a little
Yeah,
different.
but I agree, I think we all feel that, you know, I'm gonna say it, the hot dog stand guy, he's just out there he's trying to make a little money, he's trying to provide a service to the community. As long as he meets the health requirements, protecting the community, I don't think we as a body should be making it difficult for him. Now, I do think that we have to be mindful that we might have abuses, but still, unless those actually show up, you know, you kind of, in my opinion, you draft something, and then if something comes along, we can tweak it after the fact. What do you think, Mark or Kara?
Chief, do you see any issues that could come up with this from, like, any standpoint that you would have with parking or anything at all? If they're not serving alcohol, which it says in here that they're not going to, I don't see anything that would really come, but I don't know. I don't imagine there'd be anything
Yeah,
trickier
no.
than I asked.
That was one question I did have, was would it prohibit alcohol? And one was just strictly cooking.
Yeah, this doesn't allow alcohol.
Maybe we have to have permits for that. No, that'd be the only thing, is just like was already brought up, any type of obstructions, because obviously then we're gonna get complaints, have to respond to that.
Yeah.
So if they're not parking on the sidewalk, that type of stuff, which
Well, that'd be the other
it'd
thing.
have to be spelled out so that it's enforceable on our end.
Right.
Either by warning or enforcement action.
Have you guys ever had any complaints with these food trucks that set up here at 1803? How they line up on the sidewalk?
That, how they would?
How they line up on the sidewalk to get to the food truck?
Nope, nothing I'm aware of.
I do agree with Nikki. I don't think they should be able to put them on the sidewalks, the carts. Maybe just use a parking space. I know it's really hot to stand on the asphalt like that, but
And like I said, I understand logistically, getting that thing off the sidewalk has to be really tricky.
Sure.
But I just, like I said, I'm concerned about safety and, in particular where this, the one that comes to mind, it's prime playground tool location, and it concerns me that there's not a great line of sight.
well, thank you guys for all the work you put into this and the research. Thank you. I think it's
That might be
exciting.
another
I think
avenue
food
as
trucks
well
are
as
so cool.
apparatus.
I think they're incredibly cool.
Yeah.
I think it really helps from a quality of life perspective and tourism.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Oh,
do
for
too.
food vendors?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I
Love
mean,
them.
Okay. I agree, Mike. I think we can kind of think of, send maybe some suggestions and,
Then when we meet again next month, we can take and get something drafted up then and get moving.
Real quick, that'd be the only other concern too, is not just the mobile unit itself, but maybe any apparatus or portion thereof to not extend to the sidewalk. Because potentially what could happen is that could force pedestrians to have to walk out into the roadway or somehow get around it. And that could become problematic if they don't have good line of sight, the vehicular traffic, and then they're stepping out to go around a trailer hitch or something of that sort, and puts them out into traffic.
Make the verbiage in such a way that would indicate that they aren't allowed to block traffic on the sidewalk in any shape or form, or,
Correct.
Yeah.
The mobile food cart itself or food truck or any portion or apparatus attached to it.
yeah, okay.
Like the condiment table or something like that.
Right.
Sure, some of
Yeah.
them do extend out, so, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep, I wrote that down.
Okay, anybody have anything else on this? If not, I'll go ahead and move on to the next thing here, is equal opportunity ordinance. And I believe this is Mr. Palmer's forte.
Oh, I'll defer to Kara if you'd like.
okay. So, this kind of came up a couple months ago. Mr. Palmer and Mayor O'Leary and I were talking about, updating our anti-discrimination policy here in town, and adding a couple of new, things to it to make sure that people are feeling safe and that they have the same opportunities as other individuals here in town. So we had talked about either updating kind of the old ordinance or bringing in a new one, just to define a little bit more within the city about how we can make sure that people have equal opportunity to housing and employment and public services here in town that aren't protected by state law. There's a couple of other cities that are doing this. We've seen about 35 now across the state that are adapting these policies to help people feel a little bit safer and have more access to things here in town. So just really adding in to kind of what we already have with the race, religion, age, creed, national origin, just adding in sexual orientation and sexual identity to kind of keep people from having the same rights as everyone else. I think it would just be a move kind of in the right direction to keep thinking about economic development, quality of life, we want Galleon to be seen as a place that's welcoming and a place that you can come and be and have a career and have a family and not have fear of anything that you may be discriminated against. I think that was very brief, but I think that was it.
If I could sort of piggyback on that.
Sure.
Ms. Alt and the mayor did ask me, we did have that conversation. And then I was asked to create an ordinance, and what I did was basically took a look at this and saw that the cities that did go down this path did so in two ways. There's three topics that we're talking about when we're talking about discrimination here. We're talking about discrimination in housing, discrimination in employment, and discrimination in sort of business and public accommodation, so retail and the like. With Galleon has nothing on the books at all about discrimination with the retail public accommodations and the employment area. We don't. We do have a housing discrimination ordinance. And you might remember that every year we have the gentleman come in and talk to us at length about housing discrimination, which is important to do. So what you will see in the last page of what you have is a very simple thing that says 515.02 definitions. And to change our housing discrimination ordinance would simply involve a change in the definition of the classes of people who are covered under our city housing discrimination ordinance. For instance, right now, you're not allowed to not rent to someone because of their color or religious beliefs. So that's the one thing. When it comes to the other part, and this is the major thing here that you have under equal opportunity, and it's multi-pages, this is an example from another community of what they adopted to put in place the discrimination information when it pertains to retail and public accommodations and to employment. And that's because we don't have anything, even for color, in the city of Galleon. So
But isn't all that covered under federal?
it will also state, as Kara said, this, for color, religion, most of those classes, which you'll see there, they're covered under state law.
But in the state of Ohio, unless your town or locality has this kind of done, a business can still say that they won't hire you or fire you. They can deny you housing, they can deny you services in a retail establishment because of your sexual identity or expression, or you're just any of those different things. So no, those aren't covered under state or federal. So we're seeing more and more communities kind of go along with this to protect people and to have people come back to their home community after they go off and go to college. And they don't want to come back because of fear of kind of that not being accepted, not having the same accessibility to things as maybe they would in a bigger city. So kind of losing out on people returning home and feeling comfortable moving here or being where we are.
If you wanted to get a sense of this and how it operates, one thing you could do is reach out to one of these other communities and talk to them and their city council and see what
Like?
path that went down.
Who?
I can get you the list. As Kara says, about 25, 30 cities.
And there are cities that are of our size and also smaller that have went ahead and adapted these. Recently, it's been, I think, Hilliard is bigger, but I think they're working on it in Delaware. They did it in Gambier. They did it in a township.
But those are huge places. I mean, we need to know with the population of 10,000,
That's why you need.
you're
that
dealing
list.
with hundreds of thousands.
I think if the population is one person that feels unsafe in a community, it's enough.
Thomas, is, like Mark mentioned now, there is federal, but there's no state.
There is state law.
There is state law that
Yes.
covers, including this currently, or is that just,
That covers certain classes.
Certain
of-
classes.
Of individuals,
okay,
you know, by, as I said before, by color, by religious conviction.
okay.
This would
So if we
expand
would-
that
we
list
would
if you chose
get
to do
something,
it.
Well, given, I think that as opposed to rewriting the book, so to speak, I think maybe updating, just like you indicated here, a definition in the, or updating what we currently have on the books to accommodate this would be.
For housing only, that would be,
Yeah, that would be for housing. Could we, well, so would we have to still draft a separate, because I'm a big one for not putting a lot of ordinances out there if I can possibly help it. Is there a way of accommodating this in that as well as situations for employment and such? Or is that something that would be still more of a state issue?
well, again, it is covered under state law for employment in certain classes.
Right, yeah, oh, that's right, my bad.
So, you know, Galleon, you know, citizens of Galleon, businesses of Galleon are all protected if they're in certain categories.
Right.
And we all are.
Right,
So what I might suggest is for you to get a sense of comfort or discomfort with moving along the paths of each one of those three: housing, employment, and public accommodation and commerce, if you will,
Right.
or retail. If you want to go through all three at the same time, there could be an ordinance to that effect that would both adopt a new chapter and also amend a current ordinance that we have. It's up to whatever you want.
See, the one you got on here, did you say 51502 is housing?
Yes.
Okay, how come there's no military discrimination in there? Which I know it's in that folder that Julie's got.
I took it from, what folder would that be?
That little one you just held up,
That little brochure.
Oh,
doesn't that have military discrimination in there?
Well, this is an easy question to answer. Is it triplet? Because I think we have a codified ordinance book sitting up here, do we not?
One of our books?
Yes. If not, I can pull it up here on my phone.
No, they're not.
So this would just be simply looking at whatever the city of Guy currently says.
Because I remember that Hartzler talking about that in his conversations up here.
And again, you know, Mark, it could be in the state and not in the city. That 515 thing you're looking at is city. What is that number? Does someone have it in front of them?
51502.
Okay, thank you.
well, I know we all want to take it and make sure everybody's safe and has equal opportunity, and that includes the various vendors and stuff, because there is issues where they're sometimes falsely accused of something that that's not what it was, and so, but yeah,
I have it here, Mark, and it does not, that particular section of our current ordinance does not reference military service.
So whenever we add this other stuff in, we can add it.
You can add that in.
yeah, that
I
should
don't see
be,
it in what I'm reading.
It covers race, color, creed, sex, marital status, religious belief, national origin, age, familial status, or handicap. That's what the City of Guy ordinance currently says.
when was that ordinance done, do you know?
Oh, well, I just turned it off, Mike, so I don't know.
That's all right. Then you don't have to turn it back on. That just dawned on me, I'd be curious to know, because, I mean, like so many of our ordinances, they've been on the books for a while, it's probably due to be updated.
It could very well be, because we do try to make sure that our ordinances match the current Ohio Revised Code.
Right.
But we're not always 100% able to keep up with it.
Right, sure.
Because the Ohio Revised Code changes so quickly. I'm finding an answer for you here, hold on.
Well, you didn't have to pull it back up again.
Well, it's okay.
And one other thing that we talked about whenever we were talking about this is this still protects like private clubs from having their own rules and different organizations. So
That
if a
certainly
private
does.
club wants to say, we won't allow people who are a part of the LGBT community in our club, that's their private club's idea. But if you go to apply for a job and they say, sorry, we won't hire you because of who you're married to or whatever, I think that that's a big difference. So that is one thing that I did like to hear, you know, that there are institutions that can still make their own rules. It's not, you know, putting rules on places that they aren't used to. It's kind of making things a little bit more even.
The answer to your question was 1989.
Wow.
Okay, I'm gonna rest my case then. Yeah, it's definitely something we need to look at then. Obviously, we're not gonna make that decision tonight for it. So as with the first one, I think we need to review this. As Mark, you said, indicated, you know, to maybe talk to some other folks, see where they come from. Same as Kara, I think that would be a good idea. I do think that we need to add military service in that as a reference. And we'll, on our next meeting, we'll go from there and see what comes out.
I'll make sure Julie has a copy of the list of the cities that have these currently,
Okay,
so she
I have a
can
quick question.
disseminate that information.
sure, chief, go ahead.
And I might be interpreting it wrong, but does it cover the use of public restrooms at all?
I would suspect it
It doesn't seem to address it anywhere in that 5XX
Yeah,
point oh three prohibited acts, where it talks in that A section of, they can't deny full enjoyment of goods, I guess supposed to be services, common facilities.
I think it probably does, chief, because it's under 5XX05. It basically says the city is bound by this just as any business or citizen would be. So I think that it would apply to city restrooms.
And one other thing, just kind of talking about enforcement standpoint, from what we heard from the woman that we talked to, is that there's very little, I don't know how to say it the right way, is that there's not a lot of times where the city has to go in and enforce these ordinances, that once they're established, that people typically follow them, and it's just there kind of as a guideline, and there's not a lot of additional work to be done from the city's standpoint about things unless there is an issue. But that was one other thing that we had talked about whenever we discussed that, was how often are you having to enforce, you know, these and spend that time and resource on that. So that was one other positive thing, I think.
Your question, Mark, where were you going with that?
I was just thinking, if we get complaints at the police department of a private or public place where somebody's using the restroom that doesn't seem to be fitting for their gender, you know what I mean, with the gender identity and all that type of stuff, is there anything in there that addresses that?
Yeah, I don't think we should go down that track. That's my own personal opinion.
Yeah, I would agree, I just didn't know if it addressed it anywhere.
I
Maybe
think
I
it
was
does.
missing it.
I think it does.
Okay,
So that's why you need to look at it carefully,
sure.
to make sure you know what you're looking at.
Anybody have anything else on this?
I do not. I think it would be beneficial. That was just my last thing to say. I think it'd be a good thing for the city to adapt and look at.
Well, I think that, especially given the 1989, I think there's a lot of things that have happened in almost 30 years or more than 30 years. So, I think this would be a good opportunity to get this all updated and, put it in the book, so to speak. So, if it sounds good to everybody, that's what we'll do. We'll do some more research on this, and when we meet, next meeting, then, we'll go from there and see where we're at. So, if nobody's got anything else, we'll go ahead and move on to the next thing, which is golf carts. And I'm gonna say probably Ms. Ward has that one.
As I said in my email, I think what has brought this topic up is the application the chief had 3 or 4 weeks ago for the safety inspection for a golf cart. This is an individual whose mother is a snowbird, wanted to have the ability to drive a golf cart around Galleon when she's back up north. Because it was the first time it came across the chief's desk since he's been in that seat. We weren't sure what the answers, did a little research, and it turns out we don't have an ordinance that allows it. State law says we have to adopt something locally that allows it, and we have not done that, so it's now in your hands as to whether that's something you would like to have.
Well, I'm gonna say if state law is requiring, I'll use that term, us to have something down, then we probably should have that.
And that's,
What, we don't have anything at this point, right?
We've scoured, we will continue to scour, but you have before you two, the applicable state laws. And if you look at 4511-214, under A, under paragraph 2, you'll see that it upon such streets where a local authority has granted permission for such operation in accordance with 4511-215, and that's the other one you have before you, and it says, by ordinance or resolution, a local authority may authorize the operation of underspeed or utility vehicles or mini trucks. I don't know what a mini truck is. You know, Chief, what a mini truck is?
They're coming over, the ones that are coming over across the pond that pass EPA, have a low speed. They're just small little trucks. A lot of people buy them and use them on farms, just
Gotcha.
little bitty things, not even big as this thing.
Somebody did like, I don't know if it was a Cushman, did Cushman make a little truck? or-
Cushman made one.
Right, because I saw like, over the Cyrus police were over there, somebody used to drive one of the little itty bitty things, you know? Yeah, I think he might have made it, but, yeah.
Well, if you remember years ago, Dick Taylor drove the Cushman ice cream truck all around town.
Did he? Well, you know, then it, under 4511-215A, the Ohio Revised Code and the General Assembly did one of their famous, if we want to have a law, here's what the city's law has to say, and that's what the rest of that is. So the bottom line is, if you want to do this, you can. If you want to do this, this is what you have to adopt.
Well, I think if the state says has it, and all kinds of other places around, Ontario, Bucyrus, they allow golf carts.
Really?
I mean, we allow golf carts as long as they're licensed, right, and have the proper equipment, turn signals, brakes.
Well, right now, that's not legal for us to do that, so, until we fix it.
That's kind of the sticking point.
That's the problem.
That's why if you want to do this, you need to pass this thing authorizing them to do that.
I think we all know we have them around town, but we don't have legislation saying chief can sign off on this inspection form so they can take it to the BMV and get their title.
Man, I could have swore we did that.
And I did have a conversation with Chief Satterfield, and he said he never wanted to get into the inspection business, which is why he sort of just,
But he signed off though from once they got inspected.
well, he didn't want to be an inspector.
Right,
So
right.
that's why.
I think you have concerns for liability that we check off, saying it's
Right.
safe for the road, and then something happens.
Good point.
Right, which you wouldn't want that to have, be that.
The maximum speeds of 20 miles per hour is what these have to fall under, so.
I thought it was
what-
35.
Yeah,
No,
so
that's
what's-
if you have it on roads that are greater than 35 miles per hour.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So let me get this straight, if I understand this right. So, the state of Ohio does have current laws that govern a vehicle in this category, right, Chief?
Yes.
Okay. And the only sticking point is that under one of those laws, it specifies that we basically have to also say it's okay to drive this vehicle on this. Am I
In
right?
addition to, it has to be inspected, licensed, registered. titled.
Okay, okay.
What the chief
But
said.
now, who would do that? Is that gonna be,
Besides, police do it, state patrol does it.
I think
It says on here, it says it successfully passed required vehicle inspection. So it lays out where
who would do the inspecting? This
it would be
city?
like any other motor vehicle.
Oh, it'd be
No, the
BMV?
form says name of law enforcement agency and the name of active officer performing the inspection and their badge number.
It would be under this chapter. That's probably what that chapter says. huh?
Right.
So this is going to.
Depends on whoever you deem, if we do it, and. it's
Well, see, that's what
authorized
I'm trying to
For
get
the
to.
city to do it, then.
Right, that's what I'm trying to get to is, like you mentioned, Chief, the liability issue, involved in that. Not that I think that any of us have a problem with golf carts running, going up and down the road necessarily.
Well, there'll be an insurance requirement, but that's state law. That's not ours.
Right.
Chief, are you okay with doing the inspections? I guess maybe that's a more straightforward way of saying, will you do them?
I guess I would be more inclined to defer. I don't know what the liability issues would be, I
Yeah.
guess. I mean, somebody could pull off a side street, get smacked by a semi, I don't
Yeah,
know if that's
that's-
gonna come back on the inspection form or not, or you inspect it, seems fine, the wheel falls off. Is there anything that's gonna come back on the city because we signed off on it?
I would be curious, how is it, so the other municipalities, they do their own inspection?
Yeah, we can take a look at that.
If a car gets inspected though by the state patrol and it gets hit, that doesn't put them under liability.
Like I said, that was my predecessor's viewpoint on it, was a liability issue. The form seems
Okay.
pretty simple to me, you're checking off like maybe 10 things that they have equipment-wise.
Lights,
Yeah.
horns.
9, yeah. Brakes, brake lights, headlights, taillights, pointing devices, steering column, or steering mechanism rather. Windshield, rear view mirror, and tires in safe operating condition.
Sounds pretty straightforward.
I don't see how that could put you under liability because, the state patrol does an inspection on a blue title vehicle. It's not their liability if they go out and get run over.
Right.
And as long as it was working when you saw it, if they go out and unhook it after they leave you, I mean,
And as long as we're following the law, and as long as we're adhering to the statute, we have liability insurance, that's why we have it.
Well, I'll say one thing, it would be a lot easier if you guys wouldn't mind doing it because these people have to haul them to Bucyrus on a trailer
Oh, yeah, that's true.
to get them inspected, So if you guys did it, they wouldn't have as far to haul those things.
Sure. My limit capacity, I don't see a whole lot of these, a pretty simple form, but.
Is that a state form?
Yes.
So,
you got one normal, in your packet, one normal has, but they, and all the traffic out from everybody.
It's just one of those things that will open up somewhat of a can of worms in a sense, because some people aren't used to it. So they'll get it licensed one place, they don't look at the laws that, this city doesn't allow for it, and then they
Right.
get stopped inside it because they're in violation of those ordinances of that city,
Right,
even though they were okay under the state law. So it's gonna create some
right.
a learning
that's-
curve there.
Yeah.
Can be operated on a roadway of excess of a speed limit of 35 miles an hour. It has to be 35 mile an hour or less.
So that means,
So-
in town, they can't go to Dairy Queen.
Yeah, you catch them going up that way, or you catch them going out.
Well, you're nuts
61.
getting on Portland Way with a golf cart anyway.
Right.
God bless you.
Yeah.
There's a car pushing it.
No, but what you would be doing is you would be making it legal for those people who are already doing it. One went by my house on Saturday, the people out there
One
doing
parts
it.
of town, you know, that's why I said, you know, we didn't realize that it's illegal by us not doing it.
Well, and then technically, they run them all over Hicey Park all weekend. Golf carts.
Yes.
They did.
Not
So-
necessarily on public streets, but yes.
Hicey Park's a public street.
Oh, I thought you meant in the park itself.
Like on the
You're
ground.
talking about on the streets.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that is absolutely public street, yeah. 100% agree.
I'm sure they didn't all have windshields in great place.
No.
They will now.
Yeah.
And when we look at this stuff, we gotta look at everything. We gotta be fair about this.
Well, yeah.
I think most of them that you do see on the street, they do have the windshields, or they're plated.
Right,
So-
exactly.
Right, so if they're plated, they probably got all of that stuff, you know, if you've got a plate from the DMV, they have the brake lights, the turn signals, and
Who's that?
The golf cart.
the golf carts.
Just like you have to have a driver's license to drive it, and you have to have a seat belt, you
Right,
have to
so
follow
they've
all
got
the
the-
traffic rules.
Like the one like Thomas seen, or the one that's uptown, they have license plates on.
Yes, they do.
Oh, yeah, right.
They
Yes, you
probably
do.
already got the
Yeah,
brake lights, the turn
yeah,
signals,
yes.
the windshield, they've got.
Exactly.
They've got all that already.
Because they had to been inspected in Bucyrus.
Yeah.
So I'd say, what do we need to do, Thomas?
Well, on this one, if you're of a consensus that you want to allow them in Galleon, then what could happen is we could get an ordinance drafted up, because we already know what it's gonna say. For Tuesday's meeting, we'll probably have to vote it on, but you can say there that you've talked about this and you're in agreement, if you are.
I am, I
What do
think
you
it's
think?
fine.
Yeah, I don't-
I disagree. Chief, I'm gonna ask you too. So, I know it's hard decision, but we value your input.
As far as what specifically, I guess, are you
Just
asking?
inspection and stuff, that's how much of a issue that gonna cost your department.
Oh, I don't think it's gonna cause much issue there at all. I mean, like I said, it's a quick form to fill out, records retention, that type of stuff, so. I think more of the issue comes long-term with obviously more than one roadway and stuff like that. I mean, if you've been to Put in Bay, different things like that, sometimes they don't think they have to follow the rules of the road, you know, switching out drivers with underage kids driving them around, zipping around, not following the, like you said, you have to follow the laws and the rules of traffic. And I can see the more you get out there, the more chance there is where somebody's not gonna be following that, probably leading to accidents, different things like that, but,
Well, we can always tweak it as those issues.
well, there's laws on the books, so I mean, it's just
Right,
gonna be enforced,
Right.
you know, more.
I'd say, Thomas, I see from the looks of the members that, yes, they would like to go ahead and do that.
Okay, I'll do it.
So if you would be so kind
Sure.
to, and Julie's holding up a hand.
Yeah, the only thing that, you know, most of the people were in favor of it, like, when I got all this stuff, and one of the emails from one, I have, what, Phillipsburg or some little bird, they just said it got to be like, it was a real pain for them because it got to be like their village, they were treated like a campground, and everybody was running everywhere on sidewalks, up through yards and everything else, you just got, you know, so like, you gotta control that kind of stuff, and I think.
Well, if it's a licensed motor vehicle,
Right.
people know they gotta follow the vehicle laws. And if they don't,
That's optimistic.
you guys write them a ticket.
Yep, I agree.
Some people don't like
They
following
should, though.
motorcycles,
Yeah.
some people
How do
don't.
you give a 13-year-old?
We allow bicyclists.
Well, he shouldn't
on
be
public
driving
roads.
that, it's only 13-year-old.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean, why should we stop golf carts?
So,
Yeah,
and
no,
why would
I-
we stop?
right.
I think the whole thing tonight is all about our ordinances need updated for the current environment in which we live.
Well, exactly. So, given the consensus I'm seeing here, if you would be so kind,
Yep.
Mr. Palmer, to
Yep.
do that, and then we'll see about getting it voted on the council agenda next Tuesday.
You'll see it.
Okay, good. Okay, anybody else on this subject? I don't see anybody, okay. That's the agenda. Is there anything?
I got a question on this 4511.214. Under section B, number 3, no person shall operate a motor-driven cycle.
Yes.
What's about that? You can operate a motorcycle on the road.
I'm not sure a motor-driven cycle means a motorcycle.
I think that's like one of the
Well,
bikes with the.
I think it's
motor.
like an enhanced bicycle.
Yeah.
But what's gonna happen, Mark, is there's a definition section. I didn't know you had that question, or else I would have brought it with me. But it will tell you what that means. If you want to, I can look it up.
No, that's fine, but here's the
Okay.
deal. There's all kinds of electric bicycles being made now
Mm-hmm.
that are even operating on our streets.
Yeah, but they're just saying you can't operate it on a street if the speed limit is 45 miles an hour or more. Greater than,
45.
so 50 or 55 or.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, so you're not gonna get
They're
a,
tooling around the city of Gallion, they're fine.
Probably those e-bikes that can't quite do that. I mean, they go pretty
I
fast,
suspect
those
that's-
e-bikes are,
I suspect that's what that is.
yeah. So they can apparently go faster than.
Because motorcycles obviously can go
Or a motor
on the interstate.
scooter.
Yeah.
Is that like those handicap scooters or, I mean,
well, I still think, like he said, Mark, I think it's the.
Speed limit?
Yeah, the speed limit. That's gonna be the criteria.
which would be crazy to do anyway,
Yeah, can you imagine going down the road on one of
to
those
the
little?
Dairy Queen?
It's nothing higher than 45.
They're even on scooters.
Which means you could ride anywhere in Gallion.
Oh, yeah, you could.
Yeah,
Well, you'd have-
motor-driven cycle, you could have anywhere in Gallion.
Just can't on golf cart.
Well,
I don't make the laws.
You just have to go to one of the other.
Well, again, just like Thomas said, this is one of those deals that we need to update it and get it on the books, so, and that's what we're doing. Anybody got any other business for tonight? I see nobody with anything, so next meeting is August 3rd. Wow, August already. At 7 o'clock and in here in Chambers. So with that, is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Ms. Triplett made the motion, Ms. Hall seconded, all in favor? Aye. Motion carried. We're adjourned at 7:53. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Thank you, Chief.